Ryan Rose, good morning.
Hey, good morning. A morning Kessel Chat.
Exactly. Happy Star Wars Day. I even got a little Chiron up there too. We're being kind of fancy today.
May the force be with you.
May the fourth
May
be
the
with
fourth.
you. I love it. Every time I say it, it makes me happy. It does.
That's awesome.
I've got my from the High Republic. I've got this is for anybody who hasn't read the High Republic stuff yet. I've got a Marchian Ro, the character, or Marchian Ro, I guess is his name. He is the I is his name in the High Republic. He is sort of like the leader of this group of new space pirates we just learned about called the Nihil. And I follow someone on Twitter who has an Etsy shop, and she has these shirts, and it's like this weird symbol with like the eye in the middle. It's like super cool. And yeah, anyway, trying to be geeky and subtle geeky at the same time today. I don't know if that's going to work. We'll see.
It's a hard thing to balance. You know what I mean?
It is.
I was legit on a call where at work for in addition to this podcast, Jeff and I are also workmates. And we have a lot of, very, professional meetings. And I was going through dates, I was like, okay, we're going to have this meeting on this day. We're going to have that meeting on this day. We're going to have this meeting on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And that is how I did it. And I caught myself. It was a real meeting. So it sneaks out. You try to put it, over here, and it still makes its way. I often have to prevent myself from, never tell me the odds, having some type of quick line from
never
Star
tell me
Wars
the odds.
No, never tell me the odds. I can't tell you how many times I'll be somewhere and I'll say, I've got a bad feeling about this. And not everybody picks up on that. But yeah.
Dude, it's so funny because there's that line, I've got a bad feeling about this, and then one of my like new favorite versions of that is like Lando's version in the Solo movie when they start falling into the maw, and he goes, oh, and then it cuts. I'm like, that's like Lando's version of I got a bad feeling about this, but it's a little too late at that point. It makes me so happy. It really does. Because everything happens, the music like stops for a second. When the engines go out, the music stops, and you see Lando go, oh, and you like, I get like a sinking feeling like I'm on a roller coaster every time, and you're like, oh God, what's about to happen? And then they take off, and it's like, oh, okay.
It's funny. I feel like we could probably just do an episode on lines from Star Wars that were peppering in through the day. It's funny because I'm gonna probably announce something here that I'm working on, but I've been working on a set of stories of mentors that I have, lessons from mentors that I've learned, and it's titled "Remember Your Failure in the Cave." And it's all about the one of my first mentors was Yoda. I watched Star Wars obviously a ton of times as a kid, and all of those Yoda lines, for the Jedi it is time to eat as well, like even little stuff like that I remembered, and I always thought that was a fun set of lines. But you can't drop a Yoda line into casual conversation because you sound like you could, you sound like
you might or have already had a stroke, and people are like, are you okay?
I am relearning this. I'm speaking backwards now. But yeah, like so many times, like even it's like we to throw in a Star Trek line. There's an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, called Darmok. And in it, they meet, I think it's the children of Tama, and they speak only in metaphor. And you have to know all of the locations and people to understand their language. Otherwise, it makes no sense at all. And so, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra only makes sense if you know who Darmok, Jalad, and Tanagra are. Which, by the way, I've seen a t-shirt where it's like, that's a band. It's like, live tonight, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Yes. Why that isn't a band now is like blowing my mind. But the in my own household, we are like the children of Tama, because I'll tell my kids that they need to go and do something, and they'll be like, oh no, but I was gonna play the Switch, and I'm like, but I was gonna go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters. So I'm constantly speaking in my metaphors to my kids, which is, or the other one is the with Yoda. Yoda says, always with you, it cannot be done. These are all, again, we could make a whole episode.
Hold up.
We got so much to talk about. So I will digress.
It's okay. But you had something awesome for us to start with. I mean, for everyone just joining us, happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
Star Wars Day.
We are here to just talk about all the awesomeness that's happening. There's so much cool stuff. But I had some ideas. Ryan had some cool ideas. We're going to start with Ryan's because he's been talking about this forever. And the news that just dropped about, I don't want to, I'm going to bury the lead. It's all yours. You bring it up. It's all yours.
Okay. So Star Wars, Disney, they all got, obviously today is a very big day. They are using May the 4th now in a really cool way, which is to announce a lot of new things. And there are very few things in kind of sci-fi that you can have like a really cool day that you can go and announce all this really cool stuff. And basically Disney did that today. And one thing that I had no idea was coming out, and another one that I'm really excited about were talked about. And so if you go on go and check the news today about Disney and Star Wars, you'll find out that Disney talked all about this brand new hotel that they're building at Walt Disney World. I can't wait for them to do that at Disneyland, which is this amazing immersive experience where you are going to be on essentially a Star Wars cruiser. You're going to be able, your room is going to have a starscape as you look out over, beyond. It will feel as if you are traveling in hyperspace while you are there. I love that type of experience, as you and I have talked about already, Jeff. Like, I loved Galaxy's Edge, and I was really skeptical of it. Like, I felt like I had been transported to this other place, and I really liked it. But the other thing to really add to this immersive experience, Disney debuted, and I'll read this here, first footage of their realistic lightsaber revealed. And when I heard that, I was like, is this May the 4th or is this April Fool's Day? Because I remember the old YouTube video of a guy who's like, I can't wait to have a lightsaber. And he gets a lightsaber and he accidentally like burns his house down. Like, he's like swinging it around. And it's like, because the house falls over. And he's
bad
like,
idea.
He's like,
bad idea.
He's cutting his car in half, and he's like, it's like the guy who, there's another video, I think the same guy, he wishes for Wolverine claws, and he's like, oh my gosh, why would I ever wish for these? But this looked so cool. You can find the video online, and I think you've seen it now too, Jeff, where it is an actor, an actress. She's holding a lightsaber. She is kind of in a costume, Rey's costume, and she activates the lightsaber. And typically, when you go to like Galaxy's Edge, like, you'll have one of these lightsabers where it has the standard kind of neon light attachment that's there, and you can kind of twist it off, or you can keep it on. But this one actually comes directly from the hilt, and it's really, really cool.
That is just
really amazing.
Wait.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get my hands on it. That's one thing I'm like sorely lacking in my shed. Of all the other swag and stuff that I had, the Legos and all these other things, I don't have a lightsaber. Feels a little naked in here. Actually, I just put these panels up. I think I need like lightsabers hanging from, like, how do I do it? Right here. These door panels right here. Just lightsabers.
Oh, yeah. They have all that stuff now where it's like, the hilts and things that you can do. They have like all this mounting ability to be able to have your lightsabers up. And by the way, like, these lightsabers look legit. Like, they look like they are like aluminum or some type of metal. They look they don't look like the plastic kinds that you're picking up at the store.
Mm-hmm.
But by the by, and this might just be our generation, but when we were kids, like, they didn't have this kind of stuff. And I'm always telling my kids, like, this is unreal. Like, the cool things that you have, the build your own lightsaber experience at Galaxy's Edge, or even just the ability to just pick up a lightsaber. When I was a kid, I had a green broomstick that was my lightsaber. And that is what I had. And a kid down the street had a real, had like the actual branded, like, it looked like one of the air traffic controller types of things. Like, it was a red Darth Vader lightsaber. And oh man, like, that was just something else. That's I think sometimes we grow up and we chase those things from childhood. And that is one of those things where I'm always like, lightsabers, they still have that, like, I'm still like, ooh, yeah, that's so cool. That's why I like their limited use in Star Wars. When it looks like it's a glow stick party, it's like, that's too much lightsaber.
Yeah, it almost works better. Like, that description, what you just said, like in the Clone Wars movie, or sorry, the Attack of the Clones. When we see all the Jedi fight in the arena on what planet is that? I'm blanking. Anyway,
Geonosis.
Geonosis. Thank you. When they're on Geonosis and they're fighting. It's cool to see, but you watch some of the actors, especially the ones who are playing other races, where their hands are different shapes, and they're like Kit Fisto, or the guy who has the mask, who collected Ahsoka. I can't remember his name. Anyway.
Plo Koon.
Plo Koon. Thank you.
By the way, this is like, I always think about this. I have too much Star Wars Jeopardy knowledge. Like, they need to have a Star Wars week on Jeopardy, and then I can go on Jeopardy.
Dude, we can just make that a thing. We could just make that a thing.
I will take obscure Jedi Knights for 500.
There you go.
So yeah,
but like when you watch that, I see those, especially the ones in costumes, holding it, and also the ones who don't really understand that they're just, because that what they're holding is a hilt with just a piece of thin piece of aluminum or something sticking out that wobbles a little bit, that they can digitally add the lightsaber, and at least that's what they did at the time. But you can tell they're not really familiar with how to do this, because you see some of them pull these lightsabers out, and the way they hold it and move it seems like they're holding like a styrofoam toy. Like, and no offense to those actors, but the way that their stunts were coordinated made it seem like they didn't really know how to, like, how would you actually pull out a sword if you were going to fight somebody in a fight scene? Like, how would you actually not just look, I'm a kid. Some of them look like they're like you and I would be if we got a lightsaber. Woo, got a lightsaber, and you see it on the stage on the movie, and you're like, I get it because that's what I would do, but I don't want to see that in a movie. Like, that just seems. It took me out of the moment because it made me feel like all the lightsaber scenes we saw, like in animated series, whatever else, where how they would move things around and they'd fight, and it was like good. Even in the Phantom Menace, the fight scene there between Darth Maul and the two of them, like, it felt more like, okay, this is what would this would probably play out this way. So to see them in Attack of the Clones felt very much like, like this just doesn't. There's no acrobatics. We see like 3 scenes of acrobatics in the entire series, like, Dooku and Yoda for the split second at the end of Attack of the Clones, and then Sidious and Yoda and Sidious and Mace Windu very briefly at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But that's all we see of the acrobatics. I'm like, why aren't more of these Jedi doing this? Like, I know it's complicated. I know there's digital edits and all that, but if you're going to go to all the effort of having that lightsaber there that has some intrigue behind it, that only Jedi can wield it, or a Force wielder can use it, because you can cut your damn arm off unless you can control like where this thing is moving. Why not take advantage of that and do something really cool with that? So I'm almost like, I'm with you. I'm almost like, keep it minimal, like we saw with Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, where it's only the one person's using it, and it's really like impactful when you see her use it. And for the rest of them, just leave it to the animated series. Personally, like, I'd rather almost see it there, because you can almost do so much more with the animated series that makes it feel like, holy crap, this is really cool to see them fighting with lightsabers, than really try to force a live actor to do it in these big settings. It's like, it kind of takes me out of it a little bit.
No, I'm right there with you. I actually have this, I get the Superman problem of it all. By the way, like, I really can't wait to get my hands on this lightsaber, by the way, because it is just so like it does have that kind of realistic kind of feel to it. But it's funny because I feel like this is also an issue of like when they were filming, especially like Attack of the Clones, it was just like hilts with like green or red sticks that they had to like there was a lot of imagination that the actors themselves had to do. And and what I meant by the Superman problem of it all is I also understand that you have Jedi who are almost at some point overpowered, like in a storytelling perspective, where it's like they have this ability to have this lightsaber, and they can use the Force. And you can even see Kit Fisto on Geonosis, like the corrupted C-3PO comes his way, and he just kind of knocks him over with the Force, and smiles, and then kind of moves on. And then you see in the animated series, of several of the animated series, where it's like hordes of droids are coming at them, and Jedis are just using the Force to kind of like block it back. Yeah. And you even see people like Kylo Ren holds a blaster bolt with the Force. So I mean, there's all of these things that the Force can do that then make your Jedis like almost overpowered. But I do, and that could easily be solved in maybe a line that it's like, it's actually a tremendous amount of effort with the Force to be able to hold on to a lightsaber, to actually be able to use it well. And I like that. But I could not agree more with you that it kind of made it like the Jedi just seemed to almost in the Battle of Geonosis, they're just kind of like, they're just standing there doing this, and it's like it's like what is this?
There seemed to be like no practice or intentionality behind, like, if you're going to build this whole scene and all these Jedi are using lightsaber to deflect bolts, I want to see something that looks like what you see in some other movies or animated series, where when they deflect down, it's like it's because a blaster bolt's coming at them, and they're like intentionally striking a certain way to get this thing to deflect a particular way. And then, like you said, in that movie, it looks like what they did is, hey guys, here's what I want you to do. Everyone run around and go, ah, and we'll just throw some lights in there, and it'll look like you're hitting things, and it'll be totally cool. It's like
the effect afterwards. This tennis ball over here is the droids coming at you. Don't worry about it. You just swing away. And it's one of these things where, because it's lacking that intention, and that's what I mean by maybe it's a prop issue too. Like, maybe if they had these types of awesome new lightsabers, that it would have really helped. But there is a good example of when that is done carefully. And I'll give episode 1 all of the praise for this. It looks amazing. There are two sequences in particular that I always think of. The first is Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon Jinn just meets up with Jar Jar, and he sees Obi-Wan run into him, and Obi-Wan can't activate his lightsaber because in a deleted scene he's fallen in water, and that messed up his lightsaber for some reason. Qui-Gon has to use his lightsaber to bounce back the blaster bolts that come over, and it is such a like believable sequence. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because there was a prop on set that Liam Neeson could connect with, but the way that he moves, he goes boom, 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 and I was like, oh, I totally believe this. I buy into this moment.
Yeah, when I've watched that scene before, like you can. There's even a point where he like overextends. Like,
yes,
I've watched some documentaries on like sword fighting. That it is not good to extend your arms out as much as he did in one of the points to deflect. But clearly, that's where the bolt was going, so he extended to catch it to do the deflection. And to your point, it made it feel like he's actually deflecting something back where it comes. So it made the lightsaber feel like it was a real thing in the moment, being used as a tool, which puts you in the moment like, oh, wow, this feels real. And even if it's not obvious to you, like it is to the two of us, all of those little things make you feel immersed in the story that's being told at that moment. The stuff in Attack of the Clones, to me at least, takes you out of it, because it makes you, it's almost like that How I Met Your Mother glass breaking moment when someone finally calls out that thing, and now you see it and go, oh, crap. And now you can't unsee it. And now it just takes you out of it every single. It's like, for me, when I hear a laugh track in a TV show, if I hear a laugh track, it takes me completely out of the show. Like I can't watch shows with laugh tracks because I'm like, all I hear is, oh, woo! I'm like, okay, I can't do it.
Oh no, it's funny too, because it's like there's I don't know if Ed Wood actually said this, but in the Ed Wood movie, the Tim Burton Ed Wood movie, they are the producers come onto the set of Plan 9 from Outer Space, and they see cardboard cemeteries and everything, and they're like, this doesn't look real, like it doesn't work. And Ed Wood says, don't worry about it. Movie making isn't about the details, it's about the big picture. And I always think that line is hilarious, because that is the problem with that sequence when they're rushing in the arena, and then they just go, and it's like I don't know what that is, but if you add in the detail, it's like that's one of those Attack of the Clones. And this is no hate on Attack of the Clones. It's got some significant problems, but it's a big picture movie. They knew the things that they wanted to get to, and they kind of lost it on the details. And that's why it's like, I feel like episode 1 really gets that. And even little stuff too. Like there's and I don't know how we ended up on this topic. And this is, by the way, what happens on the Kessel Chat. In episode 1, Darth Maul and Obi-Wan, and it's right after Anakin takes off on the ship, and they cut back to the kind of the shuttle bay, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul are all fighting, and Darth Maul backs up, and he points down at the ground, picks something up, and hits it with the door, and with the force, and then the doors open. And that sequence is like maybe like a second. It's like 1 or 2 seconds. I never doubt that. Like it looks like that. I remember watching that and being like, oh, that's the force. Like that's how the force is used in that moment. And so it's little details. It's these little details. It's like what you were saying about the overextending. It's the little details that I feel like, oh, that sells that scene. It makes it very real.
That exact scene, actually, it's so funny because something else, I never thought about the perspective you're talking about in that scene in The Phantom Menace. What I saw in that, it's just another thing, something different that I saw. It was the little detail of, yes, I saw him, I recognized him pointing at it, and it hits the panel and the door opens, and then he spins his double-bladed lightsaber right afterwards to enforce that, like, to kind of show you that he knows what the hell he's doing. He is not some dude with a lightsaber, not just with a lightsaber. He actually knows what he's doing. The weapon of Exar Kun. But when he does that, to me, the thing I loved about that moment is he doesn't just, like what we see Jedi do, was like when Yoda like saves people from rocks falling, or like picks them up. You see him like pause it and think about it at the end of Revenge of the Sith when he grabs the one senatorial sled and like really has to think about it. And Sidious is just like grabbing it, throwing it. It's the same thing as Sidious doing that. For me, it's in that one scene, Maul points at it, and it's basically like he's saying, "You there," and you can see the dark side in that moment because it's not. I'm asking you to. I'm trying to be in harmony with you to go do something for me. The dark side is you do this, and you see him like point and throw
Yeah.
it in that moment. And there's an anger and a frustration and a intensity about that you don't see the Jedi do. And I think that's actually really important to notice because every time you see the Jedi do something like that with the Force, whether it's and maybe this is part of like the dark side, light side piece, but and hopefully it was intentional, but it's sort of this, the Jedi always want to be in harmony with the Force. So they are essentially like subtly asking the Force to do something on their behalf, lift some heavy object, whatever else, but they're trying to remain in harmony and not out of anger, but to do something. Whereas the dark side users are always like bringing all their energy and their hatred and their anger into it, which means they can kind of make things do actions in much more intense ways. At least that's what we see. And so whenever that's maintained throughout the movies, it feels real to me. But when it's not maintained, then it feels and actually, to a degree, that fight between Sidious and Yoda at the end brought me out of it a bit because you see Sidious just like giggling and like throwing these things and just throwing them in willy-nilly, but Yoda can just pick up one very slowly, has to close his eyes. I know he's a lot older, but he's supposed to be extremely powerful, and all you see him able to do really is take one and very slowly throw it at Sidious. I'm like, I get it to a degree, but I also was like, I'm like, there's a continuity problem for me in that because I thought Yoda was supposed to be kind of a badass, like a real badass. Like when he walks in Palpatine's chambers, and he just walks in and kind of lifts his hand just a little bit, and both guards just collapse straight on the floor. You're like, oh damn, this guy's a badass. And you see that happen. But then in that scene, it's like, I know he's exhausted, but it's just like I was expecting something a little bit more intense out of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it's and this is like, I think by the way, what a great topic for May the 4th, but the philosophy of the Force.
Exactly.
But the what's really cool is I think that that Sith, that dark side user, they bring all of that passion. And I think they even had said to Ray Park, the actor who does Darth Maul, they said, everything that you do it with flourish. You do it with you're showing off because it's everything that you're pouring into it. Whereas the Jedi are incredibly serious, and you can tell like they said the same thing with even like Mark Hamill, where it's like Mark Hamill is very serious in Return of the Jedi until at the end when when Darth Vader is kind of provoking him and says, maybe I'll turn to your sister. And then it's never, and it's this full rage-filled battle that Luke is able to unleash on his father, and of course, even again, by the way, another good example of detail. That whole sequence is shot where it's a 2-shot, so you're able to see them kind of like both of them, and you see just Luke advancing, and you just see rage and anger. You hear kind of a somber song that's being played behind it because it's actually very sad what's happening right now. And then when Luke cuts off Vader's hands, spoiler, it cuts to a grained film. It's a grained film stock because it's to show you how raw the emotion is for Luke in that moment. And it's the same look that you see with Darth Vader. It's the same look that you see with Darth Maul. It's that just rawness. But again, little details make that happen. And like what you said with Yoda, I even like that that the issue with the Jedi is that they can't channel that passion. And it is like an exhortation for them to use the Force when that thing is falling on in the end of the battle with Dooku, and that kind of pillar is falling on Obi-Wan and Anakin. He reaches out in the Force to stop it. And this is the best animation of the CGI Yoda. I'm a big fan of the puppet. I don't doubt the puppet, so keep the puppet there. But the CGI Yoda reaches out and grabs it, and then has to move it, and that's the only time where I was like, that looks like it had weight to it. It looked like it was a weight that he had. Again, small details make these huge differences. But again, it's this that the Jedi themselves, because they're the light side and they're like they're they're in the river. They're not a rock in the river. They just go with it. They you know, the force just flows, and it's so much work for them to manipulate it. I like that as a concept, Jeff. Like what you're saying, it's really really good, really good.
No, I totally agree. And actually, I just thought about another scene that we both probably glanced over a little bit. By the way, there's been a few comments come through. Rich, thank you so much for being here, man. Happy Star Wars Day to you too. Our friend Matt Saunders is here, which is awesome. Matt, thanks for joining, man. And then Oliver Thomas is here too. He was asking a question about why haven't we seen light weapons based on LS Tech? It's a great question.
Yeah,
probably for another live stream. That's an awesome question. We should totally do that. Speaking back on lightsabers for a second, the scene in The Mandalorian, the last season, where Luke arrives on the ship, and to your point, he uses the Force and his combination of lightsaber deflections and throwing his lightsaber, like in that scene, I was like, sold. This is what it should look like. This is exactly what it should look like. He throws the lightsaber around. He uses it. He deflects in the right ways at the right times. And they're droids, slow-moving droids, very much like in Attack of the Clones, but he interacts with them very well, like in a 360 way. Like they're coming from all directions, and he's taking them out in different ways. When he pushes one with the Force, you can tell he's not like, his body isn't making it look like, I'm going to push half the ship off of, and one guy moves. It's commensurate with the action that happens with the CGI robot or the Dark Trooper as it falls over. I love that. And then, of course, when he shows up at the end and takes his hood off, he's not winded. He's like,
no,
I'm just, hey, he's almost like, what's up, guys? Like, he's just, and I love that because it's like, this is the epitome of what the Jedi is supposed to be right here in this moment. This is the Luke we were all meant to see. This is what we've heard about. This is what he was supposed to be. And that's a story I really want to hear more about. Like, I want to know that it happened in one of the Battlefront, the Star Wars Battlefront games, where I think it was the, not Operation Cinder, what was it called? The one where we follow the small squadron of Imperial troopers, and one of them ends up meeting Luke on a particular planet in one of the cutscenes when Luke finds his compass. He's looking for this compass, and he finds it in one of the Emperor's, the dead Emperor now, one of his treasure troves on this particular planet. And what was I going to say? In that scene, he is just calm and chill, and when the guy's like, why aren't you killing me? Well, you didn't give me a reason to. Like, he's just very sort of like, he's like, I don't see what the problem is. You didn't attack me, so why would I attack? And he's just very sort of like you said, he's just flowing through the river. It's almost like if I think a Game of Thrones reference, the three-eyed raven. He's almost like, I'm not a person anymore. I am just I am just a part of this thing that's happening, and I'm just flowing with it over time. And I love that because I'm like, these are parts of Luke that these are parts of Luke and the Jedi specifically that we're starting to get a taste of with the High Republic era Jedi in a large portion. Is we know they have demons. We know they have things that they're dealing with. But what we see on the outside when they help people is this, they're just flowing and taking, and some of them die sometimes, some of them don't, but they flow and they help. And I love that because now we're starting to get to see, like, this is what we thought Jedi were supposed to be. We're not just seeing them at the end of their time when everything is falling apart and the Jedi are kind of crumbling and all this. Like, okay, the world's over. Cool. Give it back to people. And, sort of like Lord of the Rings where the elves are leaving and everybody else, cool, it's just for man, and all the mysticism and all that's gone from the world. We're getting to see what it looked like when that really was the thing. And I like that. It's a new type of storytelling, while we also get to look at the post-era too with these new series that are coming out. Like the other big topic we wanted to drop today, which is probably everyone's heard about it, but the Bad Batch. If you've watched the latest season of the Clone Wars that came out a year or two ago, the first few episodes of that were kind of colloquially referred to as the Bad Batch. We were introduced to Clone Force 99, and we get to see who they are, these specially enhanced troopers that were like, they're all genetically different from each other. Well, some people didn't like them. I happen to love the idea of that story. Well, they get their own season. It dropped today with a 70-minute first episode, and it takes place, basically, I think what we're going to see in this first episode is when Order 66. So when we saw at the end of that episode of the Clone Wars, when Order 66 is announced, and we see an interaction between Rex and Ahsoka and the clone troopers and all that plays out, and Darth Maul, just Maul at that point is in it. Yeah. We get to see that same time period, that same moment in time happening with the Bad Batch somewhere else, where they are still part of now the Galactic Empire, but after Order 66. But because they're genetically different, we believe that the chip that affects the others doesn't affect them, and they're aware of it. And then I don't believe they're going to stay with the Empire. So what we're going to get to see is how do these people who are genetically different, who do their own thing, how are they going to deal with all their brothers basically turning on them and the Empire turning on them, and they have to do something with that information. But it's not as simple as, oh, we don't believe in you, we're not going to fight against each other. That's what all these other stories have been. This is, I think, going to be a lot more nuanced than people realize, because their genetic differences mean that they think about things in very different ways, and they're all individual. They work together, but they're all completely individual. It's going to be really interesting. I think it's actually going to set in really nicely with the storytelling you and I have been talking about for many episodes now.
Yeah, this is what, honestly, the more that I learned about the Bad Batch and the conflict, like, again, the great stories are the human heart and conflict with itself, you know. And here you've got people, you've got a rebellion, you've got a tiny group that's a rebellion within their own ranks, you know, and but also has to deal with the fact that these are troopers and people that they have also come up with, that they have to now find their own way. How do you stay true to oneself in that? How do you balance the fact that you may have to fight the people that were just recently your friends or allies, people that you were very much connected with, people like yourself? This is the story that I feel like Finn, and by the way, do an episode 11, do an episode 10, by the way, do it. I'm there for that story for Finn. Do a Star Wars series on Disney Plus that is a Finn series, because that story is one that I feel like Finn starts to get to in Rise of Skywalker, but that's a big deal for Finn. Who he is, his upbringing, having to recognize that who he is different than all of those pieces of the larger First Order. The Bad Batch is experiencing the same thing, and they're going to have to deal with that too. That's a complex set of emotions and feelings that is just a gold mine for good storytelling. So I really like that. I am really hopeful that that they really dig into that, and maybe even inspire a potential limited series with John Boyega, if he would be available to come back to the Star Wars universe, because Finn to me is the heart of a lot of what makes Star Wars great. So I think that that's what you're going to see in the Bad Batch, is this really great conflict story of what do we do, where do we go, you know, who are we now? That is a great story to tell.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Matt, our friend Matt, just posted this note. I'll put it here on the screen. And I think he's right that if you watch the Bad Batch, you're right. There's that sort of like play any RPG or MMO or what have you, and you got the prototypical sort of like the tank, the medic, the science guy, the rogue. We had those, and then we introduced was it Fives? No, it wasn't Fives. Forget which Echo. It was Echo. Introduced Echo, who was a clone trooper and had been dismantled by the Separatist and turned into this like data machine, and now he's joined the Bad Batch as like a cyborg essentially, and he's got his own path to play. And I think you're right, Matt, that the dialogue and those four sort of like stereotypical characters in your typical RPG, it probably was set, I would guess, set as a way to get people to associate really well with, hey, this is easy to consume, easy to connect with. But I'm with you and I think it will. I think it's going to lend very nicely to having them be, you know, they're still very much adjoined with military-esque ways of thinking. Mm-hmm. Someone's heavy, someone can see what they need to see, be the strategist, someone can snipe people, be a rogue essentially, someone's your science person, your medic, your tech person. But I think that's all going to lend really nicely to showing how clone troopers like Rex, who have his chip disabled later on, and realize, I don't want to think like this. I wasn't being forced to think a particular way. What am I seeing? How do I want to choose to do something with this situation? Maybe I continue with it, but maybe I choose to do something different. And I actually think there's something really interesting about having these four characters be those sort of like very stereotypical roles in a typical like either gaming type story or nerd type story. And I say that with all the love and respect, because what you're seeing, I think, is these are different personalities that each clone trooper has. They have each of these components in their training. They were all bred to do these things, but in like a hybrid mismatch. And what we see with their characters in the Bad Batch is we see all four of those personalities blown out into their own character. And we get to see how each of those personality types deals with the challenges in front of them in a different way, which the clone troopers like a Rex or, Wolf or whoever else that we see later in the Clone Wars, they dealt with in their own way because they have all these ideas in their own head as one mishmash as opposed to being individual. So I don't know. I think it's going to create some very nuanced and complex stories that come out of it. I mean, it was confirmed that the first episode's 70 minutes. We're getting 16 episodes in the first season, which tells me that very likely we're getting a second season. If it was only 5 or 6 episodes, I would say, okay, there's probably a good chance we may or may not get a number 2. But at 16, I think we'll probably get more than one season of this. Or cross it over to something else. I mean, Fennec Shand from The Mandalorian, Ming-Na Wen, she's going to be a character in this series. It's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, the beauty of the balance between animation and live action. And I agree with both you and Matt. I think this is always like a Breakfast Club issue, which is you've got your archetype characters, that those are your keys into the storyline. But to make that then work, that can't just be the end of it. You have to be able to make some choices and take some risks. And 2 series that have done that, one recent and one in the past, Lower Decks, those 4 characters on Star Trek Lower Decks, there's the nerd, there's the by the book guy, there's the new kid, and then there's the lovable outcast. That's their keys into the start of the series, and they've done some amazing things with that. And another good example is one of my favorite all-time television shows, Community, where all that first couple of episodes is, you want to, this is the jock, this is the senior citizen, this is the lovable rogue, this is the by the book person. Those are all the archetypes for you to key in, and then you're able to make, then they took that series and played with those characters and made them make really great choices. I am hopeful that, I think Matt even had this in his comment too, that they kind of build on that. Those characters can even play against type. I'm really excited with where they're going to take that.
Totally agreed. Well, listen, this has been an awesome episode. I know you need to run. I've got to run. Everyone's got to get over to watch The Bad Batch because, I mean, you just need to. Happy Star Wars Day, everybody. May the 4th be with you. And if you haven't got a chance yet, what's something super cool is you can go to StarWars.com or even the mobile app, and you can download the Bad Batch Bingo. They have it up there. It's a PDF you can download. There's like 4 or 5 different sheets you can go through. I've already called out a friend of mine. We're going to do a Bad Batch bingo here in a little bit. So if you get a chance to do your Bad Batch bingo, post it on social, tag the Kessel Chat, and we'll chat, and we'll see how we all end up. Ryan, thanks for joining me on this special day.
Hey, well, Jeff, may the Force be with you, and may the 4th be with you. This has been awesome. I'm glad we got to do this. Have a little cutout in the daytime to be able to talk about this. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you all for tuning in. It's been great talking about this.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everybody. Happy Star Wars Day. We'll see you soon.
Happy Star Wars Day, everybody. Bye.